So y'all, like I said earlier, this warehouse, rick house, barrel house, whatever you want to call it, it's all the same thing, was built in 1892 and has the capacity of 5,000 barrels. By comparison, our modern warehouses, I was talking about earlier up on the hill behind us, have the capacity of 65,000 barrels in each of those. We got 8 of those total, and they've just been building 2 more over the summer and fall, so we'll have 10 of those modern ones at 65,000 barrels by this time next year, and then this one at 5,000 barrels. Now, Brown-Forman is our parent company. I was starting to talk about earlier. Brown-Forman owns Woodford Reserve. They own Old Forester Bourbon in Louisville. They own Jack Daniels down Tennessee, Sonoma-Cutrer, Chambord, many others. Brown-Forman, though, also has their own cooperage in Louisville, Kentucky. We're at the Brown-Forman cooperage. The coopers are making these barrels every day using about 33 of these oak staves. Now, bourbon has to always go into a new charred oak container every single time. The species of oak is not specified, but American white oak is the industry standard. Doesn't have to be American white oak. Some use French oak, Japanese oak, Mongolian oak. Some of these barrels right behind you at eye level there have the word chinkapin on the stamp. Chinkapin is a species of oak that grows well around Cincinnati, Ohio Valley region. And next year actually is the anticipated release date of that Chinkapin aged Woodford Reserve bourbon. I'm sure it's going to be a special release like a Master's Collection Distillery Series release, but you'll know exactly which rick it came off of. That's all the Chinkapin right there. But anyway, back to the cooperage. We got our own cooperage, so we can do things with these barrels that maybe others can't. And for example, we were the first bourbon to toast our barrels before we char them. We have to char them for it to be bourbon. We don't have to toast them, but we use a radiant heat source to toast inside these barrels for 10 minutes. A radiant heat source, think like a coil in your oven or a bread toaster on your counter, a space heater. For 10 minutes, that radiant toast brings to the surface the wood sugars. The sugars that are already present in the wood, those come to the surface through radiant toasting. Then we char it with that intense gas flame for 25 seconds. We call it a medium char. Caramelize those sugars we brought to the surface. That's pretty slick. Now we've got our new toasted charred oak container. We do not rotate our barrels at Woodford Reserve Distillery. The idea behind rotating your barrels is different areas of the warehouse age at different rates, right? Hotter up top, cooler down low, that kind of thing. By the way, could you imagine how long it would take the 21 of us to rotate this warehouse? You couldn't do it. You'd have to have an army, and that's why nobody rotates their barrels. We rely on the seasons. Kentucky has hot and humid summers, mild to moderate winters. In the summertime, the wood in these barrels will expand and open up, just like the front door of your house in the summertime swells and sticks. Same thing happens in these barrels. It all makes sense. Cooler weather, that wood will constrict. And over the different seasons, those barrels are almost breathing, y'all, if you want to think of it like that, to get the flavor and color from the maturation process. 60% of the flavor of bourbon comes from the barrel. 60% of the flavor comes from maturation, and 100% of the color, you just saw it was clear, it looks like water going into the barrels, right? Now, we are a small batch bourbon. We don't label our bottles small batch, but we've always been a small batch bourbon. About 100 barrels go into a run of Woodford Reserve. And we don't age for a flavor profile. Instead, we age for a year statement. And quite frankly, I think that's the way to do it. Some bourbons will say blanket age statement, 5-year bourbon, right? There's a 5-year bourbon. Well, different areas of the warehouse are aging at different rates, right? And we're dumping 100 different barrels together to make a run of Woodford Reserve. You want it to be consistent. So whether you're in Texas or you're in Tokyo, every pour of Woodford Reserve is going to be the same excellence that you've always came to expect. And so we will start tasting these barrels at 4 years to get an idea where we're at in that flavor profile. Using that chinkapin as a quick, easy illustration on that flavor aging to flavor profile, you can see on the stamp, got filled in 2016, coming out next year. It'll be an 8-year bourbon. But it wasn't destined to be an 8-year bourbon. It was destined to hit that flavor profile, something we're proud of. It didn't hit it at year 5 or 6 or 7. You might already had a glass of it by then. It's going to be an 8-year bourbon. So they will drill little holes in, starting about year 4, to taste, to get an idea where we're at. So you can see little drill holes in the barrel heads there. Get a sample out, they'll plug that drill hole back with a little wooden spike. Now that sap-like resin that's formed around the drill hole is something called distiller's candy. Y'all, that is just a slang term for it because it tastes nothing like candy. So don't lick the barrels. Yeah, and more importantly, you don't know who's been licking them barrels, man. That's what I think about, right? I had an Australian guy on tour standing right here where you are, Mark, and it was about 5-6 months ago. And as I was delivering that line to him and his group, like I do every group, that ain't really candy, he was swiping his finger through it and tasting it as I was saying the words. Typical Aussie, typical Aussie. And he said, "That is terrible, mate." And I said, "Thank you, I'm not going to taste it." By the way, you were telling me that you like to eat Vegemite sandwiches earlier, if you remember that. So if that's worse than Vegemite, that's bad news, y'all. I don't want to have anything to do with that. We lose about a third of the contents of our warehouses to evaporation. About a third of this barrel contents, that bourbon, goes up to the angel share, old Scots-Irish term referring to that evaporation. Although we're losing a third of it, good things are happening. Flavor complexities are increasing, concentrations of flavors are increasing, and our proof is increasing. And that's why we gauge back down one last time with that demineralized water to our bottle proof, which is 90.4 proof. And that proof point's just a flavor choice for us. A lot of great proofs out there on the market. Everything we're tasting today will be 90.4 proof. I get asked about the signatures on the barrels. Those are not personal selection barrels. Those are people sliding through on tours with a Sharpie and writing Billy Bob loves Charlene in John Deere Green, happy birthday Russ, or whatever. Anybody appreciate my Joe Diffie reference right there, by the way? Thank you very much. Thank you. R.I.P. R.I.P. But I will show you right beside you.
I got that.
No kidding. Bill Murray signed this barrel before the Kentucky Derby in 2019.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he really did. It was not my tour. I wasn't even here in 2019, but he came through with a
barrel now. You gotta take
yeah, I know, right? I don't have any certificate of authenticity. I've had two different men say, Jeremy, I want to buy that barrel. And I said, well, it's just our word. You know, we don't have any way to prove it. Everyone's favorite Ghostbuster, though. I guess Bill Murray gets a pass, but you all don't. You know Bill Murray, man. You know Bill Murray. Now, these red barrels that you see right here above me, holding Woodford Reserve's rarest, most exclusive whiskey we have ever attempted. Next year is going to be the 150th anniversary of the Kentucky Derby. It's going to be a big deal. Baccarat Crystal, a premium fine crystal company, is making 150 handmade crystal Derby bottles for the 150th Derby. We will still have our regular Derby bottles like we always do, but they're making 150 of those crystal bottles. Those are what we call our double oaked finishing barrels. So you can see on the day it got filled in February. The whiskey in there's hit its flavor profile. It's good to go. Those are heavily toasted finishing barrels. We're just influencing the flavor a little bit with a heavily toasted barrel, 40 minutes, 4 times longer than these other barrels are toasted for. We call them our double oak barrels, if any of y'all had our double oak bourbon before. So that's going to be finished. They'll have those out in time for Derby next year. You may have seen, we've been with Baccarat since 2018. Up in the gift shop, you may have seen the Baccarat bottle behind the glass case. Yep, where you're standing and you take it to the left, there's a glass case with a red box and bottle in there. Been with them since 2018. Those bottles are holding Woodford Reserve that has been finished for 3 years in used XO cognac casks. Now, those bottles right now, you can leave with one today for only $2,200 a piece. Yeah. But good news, you all. Good news.
Is that bourbon?
It is bourbon, yep. Finished in used cognac casks. And there's no bottle limit. So you can get as many as you want on the way home today. Christmas will be here before you know it. And they make great stocking stuffers. They make great stocking stuffers. But yeah, it's bourbon, just changing the barrel finish. So like we were talking earlier, we can change our flavors by doing a grain bill change or a barrel finish.
I thought you had to be a new oak barrel.
It was, So we've made bourbon. Now we're just putting it into, so people do it all the time, wine casks, cognac casks, absolutely. Yep.
It's just a finish.
It's just a finish, that's exactly right. Yep, that's exactly right.
Cool.
And so our double oaked bourbon, which we're trying today, is just a oak barrel. We were the first ones, now there's many others double oaked now, but we were the first ones to say, let's just finish, instead of a used Pinot Noir barrel, let's use another oak barrel, heavily toasted though, get some more of those sugars to the surface, and it's a sweeter bourbon, but it's absolutely special for sure. Great questions, y'all. Any other questions?
Do any of these barrels ever just fail like one day? It's just
Rarely. I've never even heard. Every now and you can see some seepage, like I noticed those couple up there, but they really don't fail completely. They look so primitive and rudimentary. But I've had a couple of the Coopers on tours here before, and they go through a rigorous testing process and assembling them. They do air and pressure water checks, things like that. So yeah, not really. Any other questions, y'all? We're going to go by the bottling house. We're not allowed to go in there anymore. They've designated as a food handling facility. But we can go up to the door and look in, or the windows and look in. It's a bottling house. I think it is neat knowing that every bottle you ever had, wherever you were in the world, got bottled right there. And the building was built in 1892 as a warehouse. It looked just like this. The buildings look just like each other. They're very efficient. They work 3 shifts a day, 5 days a week. They're off Saturday, Sunday, and they can do 100 bottles per minute. So efficient that we often help out our sister distillery in Louisville, Old Forester. Probably 3 weeks ago, I think, I saw some Old Foe getting bottled in there. So I get asked how we get the barrels upstairs. We come out, we're going to go left toward bottling, but if you look to the right, there's a freight elevator right there. And there's a ricking machine right here, got a big metal plate on it, and that's how they plug it in. That's how they get the barrels up on the different ricks. Y'all follow me, we'll head up.